And there we are. We're recording.
There we
So,
are.
yes.
So, anyways, I've been wanting to talk to you for a while, Eric, because first of all, you're a very interesting person. You go into spaces that a lot of people wouldn't go into, and you hold your own, and you're not afraid. You talk with anybody. I've seen you be attacked in the chat, and you usually come back with something funny, and you're not afraid, and you don't rage quit or huff or anything like that. So,
Right.
it's really kind of cool. So I've been thinking about for a while, I would like to get into interviewing people.
Mhm.
And I thought that maybe a person who is as easy to talk to as you are might be a good place to start since I have never done this before.
Yeah.
So, uh, I do want to say that if this does turn into anything and people view it at some point, uh, I am fully aware that Mr. Debunks here, Eric, DJ Eric, is far more than a gay man. Okay. Obviously, if any of you have seen his channel, he talks about a great many topics, and very rarely is he totally focused on LGBT issues, though obviously he does focus on them sometimes. Eric has told us many times in chats that if anybody has any questions about being gay, about what it's like to be gay, anything they don't understand, to ask him. So I thought, well, maybe we'll just have a little conversation and talk about that.
Mhm.
So, what do you think about that, Eric? I mean, you seem to be open to talk about these things.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not, other than like doxing myself or something
Hmm.
like that,
Hmm.
I'm pretty much open book for anything. I'll give my opinion about pretty much anything. And I don't mind talking about my life either. It's just one of those things where it felt indulgent, you know what I mean, on my channel to go into so many details about my life, to talk about things that are going on. I try to pick a topic and then sort of inject my own personal, opinion on it. But I've thought about talking more about my life in general. I just haven't really found the outlet for it. So when you ask me if I would be interested in doing this, I was like, yeah, I mean, this sounds fun, and it might inspire me to talk a bit more as well. But yeah, in general, I'm willing to chat with anyone about anything, and I don't get easily offended, so it's really hard to, personally offend me. So yeah, other than like revealing details about that might dox me or people in my life, I'm willing to chat about pretty much anything.
Hmm. Right, right. Uh, which is actually kind of interesting because you've been fairly open about where you are,
Mm-hmm.
what you do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to me it would be incredibly easy to find you. You're a professional in an industry. People
Mm-hmm.
know what area you live in because you talk about it. I'm betting
Yeah.
you could call just a handful of clubs down there and say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you know a DJ named Eric?
Yeah, probably. People have found me in real life. It's not super difficult if you're in this area to run into me. And I don't mind that either. As long as you have something evil in mind or something hateful in mind. I don't really care too much. It's just more about like I know a lot of people who probably don't want their personal information talked about online, so I'd be very mindful of that. So it's not so much me; it's more about protecting people around me. I guess is a better way to put it.
Right, right. No, and I agree with that too. You don't want to. In my case, I work for a middle-sized company. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want people to, look at the company if they don't like something I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'll survive. I'm an older person. In fact, why don't we actually kind of start there? I'm
Okay.
in my 60s, my early 60s at this point. I believe you're in your 40s somewhere.
Yeah, I'm almost 50. Yeah,
Okay.
so
Okay.
late
It,
40s.
it is interesting how many people are around that age, EBS and others. Everybody's
Mm,
right around 50. Oh, geez.
yeah,
It's kind of
yeah.
amazing in this space.
I think Dave is too, right? Isn't he also?
Yeah, Dave's
Yeah.
a little older than that, but he's in his mid
Yeah.
50s. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I guess we're the older people, you know?
We just kind of found each other. It's the universe put us together.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I guess what I'm interested in, I've watched an awful lot of interview shows specifically around people in the LGBT community, whether it be trans people or gay people.
Hmm.
The conversations generally go about the same way. They talk about, when they first realized that they weren't like everybody else and a number
Hmm.
of things like that. So I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind if we go through a few of those things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't mind. We can talk about that.
So I'm wondering, how old were you when you realized that you were a little different than the other boys around you? And did you realize you were?
Um, I don't know if I can give an exact number. It's one of those things where you kind of have a period of time where I think I kind of sort of figured everything out. So I wouldn't say an exact number, but I would say probably, I don't know, middle school, that era, like around
Hmm.
that time. So, like 11 to 14, is probably around about that age is when I started to realize that things weren't the same for me as they were for everyone else. And, in the beginning, I wasn't sure what the difference was. It was more like, I wasn't romantically interested in girls. So I knew that that part was different. And I felt fondness for other guys. So I thought, is this something that everybody, struggles with? Does everybody sort of make a decision about these things, or is it something that is driving me in one direction? Because at my age, there wasn't a lot of resources for me to figure out what was happening, and there's also the issue with kids kind of bullying kids who aren't like everybody else. So there was a small period of time where I did have a bit of that going on. Um, where I think the other boys probably picked up on the fact that I wasn't, uh, you know, I wasn't doing the same things they were doing. I wasn't behaving the same way they were behaving. And so there's a little bit of that early on. So yeah, I would say probably between, 11 and 14 is when I started to notice and, uh, figure out that something was happening. Something was different.
So, and about other people
Mhm.
around you, a number of people who have talked about things like this say it's actually the other people around them that noticed first before they fully realized it. Now, it
Mm.
sounds like you're saying that there wasn't necessarily that there was some of that, but you weren't like oblivious to it, and kids around you were looking at you and say, "Yeah, yeah, you know what you are, dude, don't you?"
Yeah, I think it was a combination for me. I don't think it was like chicken egg situation. I think it all sort of happened around the same time because I knew there was something going on with me, but I also had I was self-conscious around like the other boys because I knew that I felt different. And then I think maybe some of that projected out and my insecurities might have been a signal for them. Um because I don't remember having any sort of bullying earlier than that before I started to notice that I felt different. So I think for me it was sort of a I don't know, like it all just kind of happened. It crescendoed at sort of the same point, I guess you could say for me. So I can't really say for sure which one would have or could have happened first. I just remember it all sort of happening around the same time. So,
I wonder if it's a matter of children being innocent, and what I mean
mhm.
by that is now again, I'm rather older than you.
Mhm.
So in my time, there wasn't a lot of things going on in media or people realizing much of anything. As kids, we didn't know anything. We
Yeah,
didn't know anything about sex. We didn't know anything about relationship, anything,
right.
because no one talked about that stuff back then. So, and there's no social media to see it. And,
No internet, no
no, nothing. I mean, the
streaming
occasional
services, nothing.
TV
Yeah.
shows were highly edited, and
Mm.
careful and puritanical almost.
Right.
And if you got taken to a racy drive-in movie or something, it was usually by accident because the person who drove you there as a kid was like, oh, I actually had that where I went
Yeah.
with my sister and her boyfriend, and they were much older than me. Went to a drive-in, and the guy didn't realize there was going to be like nudity or something in it. It was some
Mm.
stupid movie, like putting
Right.
his hand over my eyes and all of a sudden, oh, okay. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there was like the stuff in the '80s was weird. You go back and you think about how much they got away with a lower rating. It doesn't really happen like that anymore. But there were some that slipped through the cracks back in the '70s and '80s.
Yeah, yeah. So time ends up going by, and the interesting thing is that it is right around puberty that you're talking about this, which
Mm,
gets back to the innocence thing because prior to that, I don't know what's going to happen with today's kids, but back then we didn't know anything other than, oh, you might be interested in a girl. Oh, whatever. And we were too
Mm,
young. We didn't understand it. There was no sex drive or anything at that point when you're
right.
that young. So, maybe you saw a cute girl and maybe you did the old fashioned, oh, you hit the girl in the shoulder or something because you like her, that kind of stupid
Yeah,
thing like
yeah,
that.
of course.
But uh, anyway, so as you get into puberty and people start to adjust and develop, I imagine that things became either a little more difficult or more obvious to you. Or
Mm,
so, how do you get from, I think I might be a little different
mm,
to, huh, I am interested and what should I do? And the thing I'm interested in is, there's a bunch of things here. You have to realize, so you've got an idea that you're a little different. Then you have to start looking around saying, oh, I'm kind of interested, but now things are more complicated. What
mm.
do I do? I know I'm different. I got to be careful. So, how do you get from a curiosity to making the first step to talking to somebody, to,
Okay.
trying to open a relationship, but you're in a place where you don't know. And at this age, you don't know about gay clubs or anything like that. We're
Right. Yeah.
talking about,
Yeah.
school. So,
Yes.
how
Yeah.
do you begin?
Um. So I'm trying to think how it happened for me, because you're asking me questions that people haven't asked me for 30, 40 years. So I'm thinking back
Right.
here.
Right.
I don't think there was any sort of like social or relationship stuff that happened to me in middle school. Like I didn't hit on other guys. I didn't think about going to dances with other guys. I don't remember anything like that in middle school. Like I said, I remember feeling different, but I wasn't certain what that was at that point. By time I was heading into high school, I was a little bit older. I started to figure out that I wanted romantic relationships with other guys, and I tried to hide it at first. I actually was dating a girl early on in my freshman year. Uh, to sort of hide the fact that I was different. It was like a social, like they would call it a beard.
Yeah, right.
But back then I didn't know what the name was, like the beard or whatever. I thought if I go out with this girl like everybody else is doing, then maybe it'll be less obvious that there's something different about me, because I was still very self conscious at that point about being open about who I was, because I wasn't even certain who I was going to tell or how I would tell my family or anything like that. So I thought that was sort of a security blanket, which it didn't last long. I
Mhm.
was a very bad boyfriend, so that ended poorly. But socially, I was a very outgoing person. I went from an introvert to an extrovert between middle school and high school. Um, so I hid a lot of my insecurity by being a social butterfly. So I would do a lot of things. You know what I mean? I would go to school dances. I would take part in sports. I played soccer. I was the one of the managers for field hockey. I did a lot of things early on to try and sort of stay busy and stay I guess to be flamboyant without being obvious. I entered talent shows. I was a singer. I was a dancer. Like I did all kinds of things early in high school to sort of cover that up. So that was the way I navigated socially, and I didn't really talk to guys like that. Partly because I knew that at this point I was old enough to know that it wasn't socially acceptable for the people around me. I didn't see anybody else doing it, so I knew that like I was this weird oddball thing in all of this. And I'm like, if I talk to a guy and he is interested in me, what does that look like? Where do I do we go to the dances together? Like, what do we do? Like, I don't know how that works. And if I talk to a guy and he isn't interested in anything, then that puts me up for like to get beat up or something, like somebody's going to attack me, or, they're going to go around and talk about me behind my back. And I was very concerned about that, in high school, worried about, cause you're in school, kids are
Right.
mean, and, you don't want to, disrupt the social hierarchy. You got your jocks, you got your geeks, you got the pretty girls and stuff like that. And so I just tried to fit in anywhere that I could. And that was my existence for like my first 2 years in high school, until I eventually did come out and start telling everyone. about who I was. So I don't know if that really answers your question or not, but that I just tried to blend in any way I could by being visible, which sounds odd. I thought that the good thing was to just be myself, but do it in places where it didn't seem so obvious, like, performance art and stuff like that, which is so cliche. So,
Well,
like, I look back now and I'm like, I was totally feeding into exactly the stuff that probably would have made it obvious that I was gay back then. But anyway,
that is funny, but I mean, but being very socially out there, uh, everybody knows who you are by that point, probably.
yeah.
Everybody knew who. One of my best friends in school was the actor. The guy who was in all the shows. Who he would do. They would sometimes have students do this, the morning announcements or something. So he was always volunteering for that.
Yeah.
So it's funny because then everybody knows who you are. You actually get a measure of popularity, and there is kind of a shield in that because everybody knows Eric. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's just Eric.
Well, funny story, very quickly here. The end of my middle school career, I had been going to dance. Like, I'd been learning dance, like interpretive dance, hip hop, stuff like that. And the very last dance of the year, which was it wasn't the prom, it was just a regular after school dance right before the end of the school season. Um, I went out and I talked my mom into buying me like this outfit, this really cool, like expensive outfit that I was seeing in music videos and stuff like that. And I just remember wearing it to the dance and for the first time ever, like actually performing and dancing in front of everybody. And by time I got to high school the next year, because this was my last year in middle school, by the time I got to high school the next year, everyone knew me because of that. So I went into high school literally I didn't know everybody, but everybody knew me. And it was a weird thing because I was trying to hide this, all of this about myself. But also I was known to everyone. So it was like hyper expanding, in terms of like my popularity. And then, another thing, I know we're skipping ahead here, but I entered into talent shows every year doing singing, dancing, rapping, whatever. And I won my talent show at the school every single year for 4 years. It was a sweep in high school. I won every single time. So I was pretty well known. And there's a lot of other examples of that. So looking back, now that you're asking me this question, looking back, I'm like, how the fuck did I not? These people had to know about me before I ever came out to everybody. Anyway,
Yeah.
we'll get back to your questions. So.
No, that is actually a thing. That actually does happen. People, as kids, we're not as smart as we think we are.
No.
And when we think we're fitting in or we're cool or whatever, we're probably projecting every thought in our head without realizing it.
Yeah.
So say for a couple of years in high school, you're lower key. Now, I'm getting the sense, though, that you said, you started coming out. So what does that look like? Where's the first person or the first time that you thought, you know what, I can talk to somebody about this? And who was it and why? Not who specifically, but relationship to you. A friend
Yeah, actually, it wasn't in school. This is sort of like I don't think I've ever talked about some of these things I've talked about before. I don't think I've ever talked about this before. That's an interesting question. My first interaction with another actual gay person was online. So, late 80s, early 90s, AOL became a thing. People were getting their AOL. They were, getting the disc that would come in the mail, like 30 free hours or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They were AOL chat rooms, basically.
Yeah.
I was in there too, by the way, in the chats in the early 90s. Yeah.
I was addicted to that stuff. I was in so many different chat rooms, and there's if we continue these types of conversations, there's so many things that are probably going to come up. But so I was on AOL, and I was looking for answers because I didn't know it at the time. Before I came out, I didn't know really what a gay person was. I was from a small town, basically. So where I grew up here in Virginia, it was an area that was very rural. There wasn't a lot of, I don't know what you call it, access to anything. Like we talked about it earlier, there just wasn't a lot of information out there. And the stuff that we did see was like very edited or stereotypical. So you didn't really get any real information. So once the internet became a thing, my dad had it, had his account, and you could add like 7 names. I was like, oh my gosh, I can have my own name on AOL. So he had 7 names. So gave me an account name or whatever. And so I started looking around and going around the chat rooms. And for the first time ever, I found another person who was dealing with the same things I was dealing with. And they were also a teenager, so, or at least they said they was. I don't know. You know, with the internet now, I don't know. It's quite possible they might not have been. The dangers of the internet, the world we were raised in. But, you know, I found this other person who was close to my age, and they lived in Canada. So I was like, wow, I'm talking to somebody from Canada and they're gay. Like, this is crazy. Um, and so that became like my pen pal sort of, because you know you had your IMs back then, your instant, your AIM, your
Yeah.
messenger, and then of course emails, and so we would email back and forth and stuff, and that was kind of my first experience with someone else who understood what I was going through and also didn't know a lot about what we were dealing with. So we sort of bonded a little bit over that. And for a couple years, that person was somebody that I talked to a lot, and then they just disappeared. I don't know what happened. Maybe they got arrested for talking to kids. I have no idea. Just kidding. But anyway, so yeah, I don't know. It's scary. I think back now, like wow, that literally could have been an adult. But yeah, we were talking, and you know, helped me navigate that space and gave me the courage to actually talk to another guy at school by the time I was a junior.
Mm.
So that led into my first actual like relationship, which happened, like I said, when I was in the 11th grade. And that person, I don't, I actually don't know if they're even out now. Um, they still live in the city that we were born in. They still live there. They're still friends with like people in my family and everything, but we don't talk anymore. But I
Mhm.
don't think they're with a, I don't think they're with a guy.
Hmm.
I don't think he's with a guy. I don't think he's with anybody. Um, but yeah, we started talking, and I don't know. Do you want me to continue on with that story, or is there a follow up question for what you were saying?
Well, yeah, and give us an idea about the rough time frame we're talking about
Mhm.
again. What did the general years here, and how was the world doing with gay at this point?
Okay, so
You know.
this would have been my junior year at high school. From well, actually sophomore to junior year. So the end of 10th grade, summer break, and then the beginning of the 11th grade. So this would have been like early 90s, like you know 91, 92, somewhere around that era. Um,
Now, generally speaking, I remember things getting better over time, and I'm
mhm,
mindful of something you said many months ago now, where
mhm,
you talked about people saying, well, people think, it's over, that, there's no more anti-gay sentiment, blah, blah, blah.
mhm.
We've arrived and so forth. And you said, well, no, that's not entirely true. Things are
Right.
better. But so were things kind of okay at that point? Because I don't remember what year it started seeming to be more acceptable.
Well, there's two ways to look at it. And this was something that I wasn't aware of necessarily in high school. It was something that I found out as I was, well, let's say high school. I was about to graduate when I sort of started hearing about this, but this was like during the height of like the AIDS crisis. So there was a lot of people, adult gay people, that were dealing with like really awful stuff at this point. So for them, probably one of the low points, you know, for the gay community, maybe the biggest low point for a lot of people, because they lost a lot of their friends, and I ended up losing friends to AIDS later on. But this was like that high point for that, where it was just like so much was happening socially, in terms of acceptance. I was in sort of a weird bubble because I came from a small town, and so any acceptance that I would receive was in like a vacuum. I wouldn't have really known what it was like outside of where I was. Cause like my family was pretty much entirely accepting of me. So that was not an issue. All of my friends, I'd go to the mall and hang out. All of them are straight. I know most of them we're still friends today. They were very accepting of me as well. So I think I only lost one friend during that era, like someone that I don't really talk to, but that person, I don't think they stopped talking to me because of me being gay. I think there's something else with that. I don't know what it is because I haven't really talked to him in ages. But I don't think it was the gay thing. I think he was just kind of pulling away from all of us, like our friend circle. But outside of that, for me, in a vacuum, at this point, I did not have a lot of trouble with anyone. I think everybody was pretty accepting of me at this point. that I considered to be people that I care about or people that I give a shit about. Now, if somebody that didn't know me doesn't like me, I typically don't care too much. And that was something I felt the same way when I was younger. So if there were people talking about me or saying things about me, I kind of got out of that by the time I was in the 11th grade. A little bit of growth, I guess, a little progress of my character, I guess, at that point. Because I got to the issue where when I finally came out, I just didn't care what other people thought about me.
Mm.
So, but as far as like acceptance in the world, I do remember outside of the bubble that I was in, that most of the gay characters that I became aware of in movies and TV show were just your stereotypical gay people, which
Mm.
is like the lispy,
Right.
more feminine type gay people. And it was over exaggerated sometimes for TVs and movies and stuff, which back then I didn't find it offensive because I was so young in all of it that I just assumed that's what it was like. It was like, this is what gay people must be like because this is what I'm seeing on, movies and TV shows because I
Right.
didn't have a point of reference. Uh, but none of them were mistreated. So it was more like they were the cool, funny friend or, something like that. So I would say from that perspective, in my world at that point, I probably would have had a favorable opinion about my environment. Um, but again, I want to reiterate for me personally, there was a little bit of a vacuum situation because of how small my town was.
Mm.
Um, which you would think,
Well,
oddly enough,
I'm
that would
I'm
make it
wondering,
worse.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, it sounds like there was a smooth transition from not being out to being out. I mean,
Yeah.
was there ever that moment of like literally coming out and being nervous to come out, or did you actually slide into it that easily?
Um. Okay. So the first person that I actually told was my mom. That was the
Mm.
first person. She was very supportive and she kind of knew something was going on. She didn't know what it was. Um, because she was trying to give me my own space. That's one of the things that my mom did with myself and my brother. Probably a little bit different with him because he was younger than me, but she gave me a lot of my own space to sort of find my identity, find out who I was, make my own mistakes. One of those things like, I guess if you chop your arm off, you'll learn from it kind of thing. So she was very like hands off in that way. But she was very supportive. And then I told my brother next. My dad found out shortly after that, then my grandmother, then my aunt. Like once I started telling people close to me, it sort of was out of my control at that point. As far as high school goes, let me think. I told most of my close friends shortly after telling my mom, because once my mom was accepting of it, I felt very comfortable just telling other people because that was the big one.
Mm.
I didn't want the rejection to be at home, so I was like, if I tell her and I get rejected, then I'm fucked, and I'm not going to tell anybody else.
Right.
That's kind of where I was. But once she accepted, I kind of grew a spine a little bit and was like, I don't really care. And the other thing is that the way I am now, like even at my late age of almost 50 years old, I still feel the same way about it. Like I don't let people control my self-worth. Like I don't let other people tell me what my value is, and I have always felt that way. You can have any opinion. Other people's opinions of me is none of my business because it doesn't affect my world unless they're the person signing my paycheck or booking me for my next gig or something like that. Outside of that, it doesn't really matter. And that sort of started once my mother approved of me. Once she approved of me, it's like my whole world flipped and I was like, I can be gay and be myself and I don't give a shit if other people don't accept me.
Right.
And I feel like it's an outlier too because a lot of gay people have horror stories from their high school years. I know a lot of my friends that I met later on told me how awful it was for them and all the things they went through. And I hear about that and I'm like, that's crazy. Again, I came from a small town and it could have went south easily,
Right.
but I don't have any negative memories of any of that. I mean, like I said, there was a little bit of bullying in middle school, but once I became, I guess, popular, I mean, I always wonder if that shielded me a little bit from some of the things that other kids would have experienced because you can't really bully someone who doesn't let you bully them, if that makes any sense. And I wasn't going to give in to that. So for me, it was sort of, I guess, a smooth transition. It just required me to get over the hump of my mom, being supportive, and that's
Right.
really what it was. So
Right, right. That which is interesting, which is why I said that that popularity is in fact an incredible thing. Like I mentioned, my friend who everybody knew because of all the stuff he did,
mhm.
that is kind of a shield for you in
Yeah,
that, because oh, Eric's a good guy. That's the thing about kids. If other people go along with you, bullying works really easily. But when other people say, "What are you talking about? He's a good guy," and suddenly you're the only one trying to bully, and oh, okay, I guess I won't.
right, right.
So maybe that did protect you, you know?
Maybe, I don't know. I'd have to go back and ask some of them. Every once in a while on Facebook, I get a message from someone from high school that was not so kind to me. And they talk very favorably of me now. They're like, "Hey, how are you doing? We haven't talked in forever." And I'm like, "We didn't talk in high school, really." It's like one of those things. But then I'm wondering if the reason why they have a favorable memory of me is because the people around them had a favorable memory of me,
Mm,
and maybe that's why. I don't
yeah.
know. Maybe.
Oh, it could be. Could be. So as you move forward, getting a little older now, you're going out into the world.
Hmm.
So probably a point where you're starting to think about getting serious with somebody.
Hmm.
About how old were you? Now, to put into context, from my generation, I had people getting serious with others late high school and in college, and they were all young. All right.
Right.
So
Right.
what we call young today, college age, because a lot of people were like getting married right around that
Yeah.
time, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a little
It was
further
almost
forward in time
expected,
for
right?
you.
Wasn't it expected to
Yeah.
start early, start a family early? Yeah. Yeah. I can
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah. So where did you start with like your first serious relationship? Something said, oh, this
Mm.
may go somewhere.
So you mean something other than we're just having fun, right? Something
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay. I never went through my whore phase. That's what like a lot of people call it. I never went through a whore phase where I was like just sleeping around with a lot of people. I don't know why that is. That's probably something I have to think about to try and figure out why that is, but I just never did. So I always went into uh dates and things with the intention that maybe it could be something more.
Hmm.
Maybe that's delusion. Maybe it was just like, I think everything is going to be long term. But I always wanted that because I thought, like, I just want to find someone that I can be friends with that ends up being that life partner. Somebody that, because I think ultimately everybody wants to be friends with the person that they're either dating or marrying. You want to make sure that person is someone that you are. Look, maybe that's me being, super optimistic, but I would like to think that most people want to be best friends with the person they're with. So that's kind of how I approached all of it. So yes, I had some things that didn't work out, but my very first thing that was more than just a fling ended up being, I think it was around the age of 19. I want to say 19, 20-ish. I'm trying to think back to like all of my major relationships are pretty embedded in my memory, but I'm just trying to remember the exact age that I was for my first one.
Hmm.
Which was with a guy, we'll call him PJ. So PJ was someone that I met at because you have to remember back then there was really only one place for gay men to meet each other, and that's bars. There was really, you're not just going to walk up to somebody in public and assume that they're into you unless your
Right.
gaydar is working. So mostly it was like bars. So my early relationships were almost dominated by that interaction because that was really the only place to meet anybody. So I met PJ at a bar, and he was older than me. I think he was, I want to say late 20s. So he was like 28, 29 when we met. So almost a decade older than me. Um, but I didn't really care. It was more about whether or not we got on. Like we had things in common. We enjoyed the same stuff, things like that. That's what I was looking for. And of course, all of that went out the window because I thought he was very attractive. So I was like, oh, he's a really hot guy. Who cares if we have anything in common? That was like that kicked in. So we started dating, and I think within the first 3 months, I had moved in with him.
Hmm.
Never do this. This is anybody listening to this. Like, I know this sounds like an old man telling you what to do. Don't move in with people so quickly. Give it a little time. You know what I mean? Make sure it's going to work out. You'll know when it's right, but don't rush it. But I moved in with him after 3 months, and we ended up being together for about 4 years. So I would say that's a pretty
Wow.
lengthy amount of time. But that's a very like that entire relationship could take up a video series. It was a lot. But yeah. So my first long term relationship was when I was 19. I would say 19 is about the right age. So.
Well, and that's interesting because you gain a lot of experience. All right, you went through all of it. You met somebody, got serious, you moved in, and you literally spent a few years together. I mean,
Mm,
you basically lived as a gay couple, all that. So you got all this experience at a pretty young age,
yes.
and it seems like sounds you're still in this acceptance bubble as well, you
Mm.
know. So how about during that time period? Was there ever any serious anti-gay things that happened around you that were actually around you, not things you saw or heard of in the news? Anything around you that got serious and you like said, "Ooh, maybe I've got some danger here," or did you not end up experiencing that during that kind of time?
Um. Well, it wasn't for me specifically because I was pretty out, but the guy that I was dating at that time experienced a lot of anti-gay stuff. He was very closeted. He was in the Air Force. He also volunteered with the fire department. So he was around a lot of your stereotypical, macho men, like macho energy. And so he was very self conscious about it. He was not out to anyone, even at his age. And it might have had something to do with that. The fact that he was older than me, maybe his time for coming out had he didn't feel comfortable doing it when I did it, which would have been, in his high school years because of the era that he's from.
Right.
And it's possible. I don't know. I don't want to try and diagnose his life, but I feel like that might have been something. Either way, he wasn't out to anyone. He wasn't out to his family. He wasn't out to any. He had like one close gay friend. Mike was his name. I don't even know where Mike is anymore, but he was kind of an asshole. But he had one close gay friend. But he dealt with a lot of anti-gay stuff, and I don't know if it was because the guys knew he was gay and he wasn't saying anything. Um, but they gave him a lot of shit. He got bullied a lot. He got called names. He would come home from work just completely upset because, they were saying things about him and he heard so and so was talking about him and things like that. And yeah, I mean, this was stuff he dealt with pretty regularly. Now, of course, this wasn't me. This wasn't happening to me.
Right.
But I was dealing with him dealing with it. And it was pretty rough because I think he wanted to be out to everybody and he just never ever was. And even now, like I know he moved back into where his family was from Ohio, so he moved back to where his family is when he retired from the military. And I don't think he's even out to them still. I think he's still closeted. So I think the bullying and the sort of like pushing the boundaries kind of kept him from being comfortable being out. And I actually think the guy that I dated, we didn't talk about this, but the guy that I dated very briefly in high school, who also isn't really out now and isn't really with anybody, I think he might have suffered from the same situation, sort of like bullying to the point where he just didn't feel comfortable, coming out. And I also want to say at this point, I wasn't really in the gay community, if that makes sense. Like I met this guy very early on. And so once that happened, I was kind of disconnected from a lot of that stuff. So I didn't really learn much about the gay community in a sense until later in my relationship. And that's when I started seeing more effects of like anti-gay rhetoric on people that I knew because I made more gay friends. But early on in my relationship with PJ, I didn't have a lot of experience with that. I was again sort of still in my bubble, if that makes any sense.
Right.
In
Right.
that way. Yeah.
That's actually that's actually interesting. So how do you go from and now we get into a bit of society here because
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about how societies move forward with first, I guess, civil unions and then gay marriage. So how do you make the transition to now you're a grown ass adult,
Hmm.
Now you're finding somebody who is a relationship that you want to have. Now you're thinking about moving forward. Was that at the time where people were either joining civil union or
Hmm.
marriage, or was was that much later? Where were you when society was at that point and you were starting to get serious?
You mean with this guy in particular, or just
Well,
in my
or with
life?
the first person where you really got serious, where
Oh,
you know
okay.
what, I want to
So
settle down, I want to
yeah,
be,
yeah.
and
So
was
that
gay marriage a thing yet, or
y-
did you have to wait for
yeah,
it?
so that would have been the late '90s. Like the person that I was with for 20 years, I met in 1999, 98, 99, somewhere around there, is when we met, and we started dating off and on casually. You know, just going to the movies, going to dinner. There was nothing super serious at that point. So we actually met and started dating probably in 1999, around that era. And we started getting serious, I want to say around Y2K, so around late 90s, early 2000s there. And we were together for a decade when we started thinking like when are we ever going to have an opportunity to kind of make things official, because it was one of those things where you've been together for 10 years. Any normal couple, at least I hope any normal couple that's been together that long, starts thinking about long term, like what is this going to look like for us a decade from now?
Right.
Where are we going to be there? And so we started talking about it. He was very religious. I'm not religious at all. You and I have talked about this a little bit.
Right.
I kind of fell out of religion as a teenager, and I never really went back to it. Um, have a lot of opinions about religion, but let's not go off the rails on that. But he was very religious. He went to church every Sunday, and he had a congregation that he loved, and his dream was to always get married uh, at that congregation. So we were waiting around for that. So I would say probably the first time that we really started talking about it was, I want to say, like 20 around 2009, 2010, somewhere around there.
Hmm.
And we would just really wanted to, because you get benefits from being married that we couldn't have. Like our health insurance was separate.
Right.
Um you know obviously he had been in and out of the hospital a lot, and every time we went into the hospital there was always some like run around we had to do for me to be the person to be there for him, because they didn't want to let me do it. It was always like, we need a kid, or we need a mother, a father, brother, sister. So that was always a hassle. So there was just a lot of reasons why. I mean, of course we wanted to be married because we were in love with each other, but also this country puts a lot of weight on people being married. So we wanted to make sure that things like property and, medical care and things like that, we were able to get the benefits of that as a couple, because we've been together for a decade at this point. So it just didn't make any sense for us to not to be able to. At this time, civil unions did not allow any of that. So we looked
Oh,
into it, and yeah, civil unions don't allow any of that. Like you get none of those benefits. Those are intrinsically connected to like the legal marriage in the country. So civil unions are very flimsy. They do allow you to do a few things, but most of the stuff, at this time, I don't know now. I haven't looked into them like as of recent. I think it's probably the same because of marriage equality. They probably didn't bother changing it. But back then, it just didn't have a lot of benefits tied to it. So we looked into it, but we decided ultimately it wasn't worth it. So we were just going to wait. And we started like, looking into a lot of the programs that were pushing for marriage equality at that point. So it would have been around 2009 ish, around
hmm.
that time.
Hmm. Hmm. So, all right. So now you do get involved.
Hmm.
Did you ultimately end up being able to get married?
Yes. Yeah, we did eventually. We had to go to Washington, D.C. It was one of the places that allowed you to go to be married, even though at the time our state didn't recognize it. Um, it was 2013, so our state didn't recognize it, and we were looking into doing that. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to at least have it done by time our state did come around, because at this point we were involved with a lot of programs that were keeping us updated on the state of marriage equality. I had been someone that was going to a lot of the rallies, not only in my state, but in Washington, D.C. for marriage equality, because at the time the person I was with was very ill, almost I would say probably over a dozen surgeries that had happened since we'd been together. So very ill. I was almost like not just a partner, but a caretaker for him at this point. So we really were a race against the clock. We really wanted to make sure we were able to get this done. So I was very attentive about it, and it was one of those things that meant a lot to me because I wanted to make sure that I was able to take care of him without dealing with the red tape in hospitals and things like that. So all this was going on. We managed to get up to DC and get married legally in DC. And then we come back to Virginia and it's not legal. We're still just two people living in the same house. And didn't really do much for that unless he was going to DC to get something done or another state where they recognized it. So that was one of the struggles we had before, obviously, marriage equality and, a couple years later. So, yeah.
So you didn't have to do anything else, though. It was like 2015 or so that gay marriage was legalized. Your existing marriage still stood. You didn't have to like redo any paperwork or anything like that.
No. Basically, once it was recognized federally, as long as you did it legally wherever you did it, it was recognized. So, that was one of the things is that by time it got recognized, we were looking into, because we kind of saw it on the horizon. It was one of those things where we were hoping for the best. Like we were hoping that when that happened, because I actually knew a lot of the people involved with the case going for the federal courts to try and, pass marriage equality. So it was one of those things where our energy was really high. And we had pretty much looked into all of that, which is why we went and got it done in DC, because as far as we knew, again, we were hoping it would just roll over and we wouldn't have to do anything else. And it ends up that was the case. So once that happened, we didn't have to do another ceremony. We didn't have to pay the state any money or anything like that. It sort of just happened. So.
Well, that's good. That's good. That ended up kind of working out that way. So that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. So where are you? Let's move into more towards the present now.
Okay.
Where do you stand now in terms of your thoughts about where the gay community is? Now, I know politics right now are very flexible.
Yeah. We don't have to get too much into that if you don't want to.
Right.
Like, I understand. Yeah.
So it seems to me that being gay is much more acceptable now. I realize there are probably outlier places and people that are, whack jobs and so forth, but it seems like it's arrived. It seems like there's no shock to anybody anymore. Is that your understanding? And if it is, how long have you felt that, society seems kind of okay overall, or is it just recently, or is society not overall okay? Because I may just be projecting that I think it's okay.
I mean, in some ways it's okay. In some ways it's not. I know that's not really a good answer. It feels like I'm sitting on the fence with that one, but let me tell you how I feel about it, because I think that's easier than going over like all the things that are happening politically, because I feel like everybody knows what's going on politically. So there's no point in really going into that. So I'll just talk about from my perspective, because I think that's what you want. You want to know my perspective on this. So there are things that I still feel very positive about. Like I think the general people around me and the people that I interact with are very open-minded, and they're not going to treat me differently one way or the other. So my relationships with people seem to be strong as ever. Like I don't feel like there's any wavering in that with the people that I associate with. As far as like my general area, like the area that I live in, I would say I haven't seen too much of a change in terms of like how they're treating me in person. And I say that because places like Facebook, where, you see the local news posting stories and things like that, some of the comments are pretty rough. There's some pretty rough comments. And I'm looking through the pages, and I'm seeing there are people that do live locally. But again, these are people that I may never encounter. I may never run into that person ever in my entire life. So I don't know if that's really how they feel, if they're being keyboard warriors or what they're doing. I don't know. But from my personal perspective in that regard, that's fine. But there's still things that I think a lot of people overlook when it comes to gay people of the United States, and things that I don't necessarily feel comfortable doing. And it's a shame, because a lot of it is things that I think should just be accepted. And these are examples that I've used for years, and my opinion on this has never changed. I still feel like these are issues that we struggle with, and it's things like simple public displays of affection. Like if I were to walk down the street holding my partner's hand, I can guarantee it would draw attention from people, even now in 2025.
Wow.
I can guarantee it would. If I were to walk down the street holding his hand, people would look. They'd probably say things. They'd whisper under their breath. And even though they might not do anything overtly awful, they're still thinking and feeling that way and giving looks around. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't understand how that feels when something as simple as like a man holding his wife's hand is every day.
Right.
Nobody looks twice at that. But if I did it with my partner, people would still look. They would still look. Or if I'm in a movie theater and I want to put my hand over his shoulder or something, I don't know if the person behind me is going to hit us. I have no idea.
Right.
I don't know. And maybe that's irrational, but the thing is, I think about it because it could happen. And I do, like the holding hand thing, that has happened. Or what if I wanted to take him out to dinner and lean in and give him a little peck on the lips because we're celebrating our anniversary or something? That's going to get attention in the restaurant. People are going to look at that because it's going to stand out. So I think it's, for me, that's why I say it's good and it's bad. Like, I think the general consensus is, as long as we are not overtly ourselves in front of people, then we're not going to see any of that stuff. And I'm in a very unique position because I'm a bearded, fat white guy that wears baseball caps. Like, no one's going to look at me and think twice of me. But then there's a lot of other gay people that are much different than I am, much more flamboyant than I am. And I mean, I wear a lot of rings and chains and I color my beard. I get it. But I can blend in a lot easier than some other people. And that's something that I'm very aware of. But I still think there's this thing, like if I'm in public and I decide I want to give any sort of relationship affection to him, and I'm not talking about like tongue in the mouth, leaning him over, I'm talking just simple things like holding hands or like a hug or a quick peck on the lips or something that anybody would do to their partner and not think twice about it. There's a lot of times where I think about that. And of course, there's certain spaces where it's not a big deal, like a gay bar or a restaurant that you're familiar with or something like that. But I can't just go into a regular restaurant doing that. I can't go into an Applebee's doing that. That would be, people would look at us like we're crazy doing that. And that's still 2025 America. So I think there's a lot of places where progress hasn't happened that affects me personally. Again, not even getting to the political side of it. That's a completely different argument. But the personal stuff, the social stuff, which is what I care about. Those are the things I worry about, because a lot of times when I'm in these spaces and talking to people who are okay with me, I wonder, would they actually be okay with me? And this is not like, I'm not saying this is a negative thing. I'm saying, like, if I were to meet some of the people in person that I've chatted with here online, and I bring my partner with me and we go out to eat, are they going to treat me differently because I want to necessarily give him a hug or hold his hand in public or something? Are they going to treat me differently? And the truth is, low watermark, deep down inside, I think a lot of them would. And I know that's probably unfair, but I don't have another point of reference. So in my mind, I'm like, they probably would treat me differently.
I think actually that you're right. And as you started talking about, and I started thinking, the out of sight, out of mind thing is what comes along. It's like when people are talking politics and so forth, they usually give a nod to, well, if you're an adult, consenting adult, blah, 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 do what you want to do. But there's this second part of that they often don't say out loud, so long as I don't have to see it.
Right.
I think that the people you're talking about, you're very accepted in the spaces that I'm in. All right. And we've talked about that before. People, you go into chats and people just love you, so that's a given. But I wonder, like you said, if you did meet any of them in real life and we all did the party where like 20 people go out to a restaurant or whatever, and you're the only gay couple and you put your arm around somebody, I bet a number of them would look and kind of, oh, yeah, okay. And it would be a thing. They wouldn't say anything, but it would be a thing.
Yeah.
So I am wondering now, the acceptance that we think is out there probably comes from media, where we do see maybe gay people holding hands and whatever in TV shows and movies and going okay. But in the real world, outside of maybe, a few cities like, Portland or San Francisco or wherever.
Yeah.
Is it accepted or not? And I'm guessing that it's okay what you do so long as I don't have to see it. Because they say that all the time with trans people and others. Do what you want to do. Just stay out of my face with it. So yeah, maybe things aren't as good. But is it a chicken and the egg thing though? Because
Mm,
if nobody does it, we don't get acclimated to it.
right.
So it's a surprise when we see it.
I don't
How do we
know.
get from here to there? Because until people see it all the time, they're not going to be used to it. But
And people don't, and that's the problem is a lot of the stuff, and this is, I don't want to go too far into like the content that I do here on YouTube in that way, but I think a lot of times when I'm arguing from a position of like, yeah, it's okay if there's a gay character in a movie, if they're just there in the background, because those kinds of things lead to more acceptance. And that's what I mean when
right,
I say that, because like, it doesn't have to be like, again, I'm not saying, and I want to reiterate this because people listening to this might think that, oh, he's talking SJW, SJW talking points or whatever. I'm not talking like full on sex and stuff. Like, I don't expect people to watch that stuff. I don't want to see that stuff like out in public when I'm walking around and stuff. I don't want that. I get it. But just simple things like existing with your partner shouldn't be something that I have to worry about. And you're right. If you see it more in TV and shows and whatever, like for example, we'll use Skeleton Crew as an example, the Star Wars show Skeleton Crew. So there was a lesbian couple on there. They were the mothers of one of the kids, and they were in one episode for like 30 seconds. But just them being there, sitting next to each other, holding each other's hands, should help to do away with that stigma around seeing gay people in public holding hands. But what happened? A bunch of channels went off on that. There was several people, I think Chris Gore was one of them, that went off on that and said, "Oh, this is awful. This is the worst thing ever. They're grooming. They're this and that." No, they're not doing any of those things. And so when I hear that as a gay person, I'm like, so simply holding my partner's hand now is grooming children?
mhm,
You know what I mean? Like that's what I have to deal with constantly. When I get on the internet and I see that stuff, I'm like, this is what I have to see every single day when I log in. And I get it. A lot of it is self-inflicted. I can read the room. I go in these spaces. I know what I'm getting, and I've got a thick skin. But there is some truth to that. And I think there's a difference between trying to protect people, protect families, protect whatever. There's a difference in that and just going after people who are existing. And
right.
I think there's a line there that keeps getting crossed. And I fear, low watermark, and this is one of the things that I do worry about, non-politically, but I think that they are trying to erase that line and just push gay people out of everything. And I know some people might say that's irrational, but look at what is happening. We're having a situation where DEI is being dismantled. A lot of companies are not doing it anymore. So now if they put a gay character in a movie or a TV show, are we still going to see complaints about it? And I'm going to bet yes, we're probably still going to see complaints about it. So even if a TV show has a gay character in the background, with DEI being gone from that company, they're going to get attacked for it. I just, it's something that I know is going to happen. I've been doing this for a long time, so I know that's going to happen. So it's just my fear that this whole thing about like, gay agenda or whatever it is that they've talked about with movies and TV shows, the slippery slope for that, and I know people hate that. They hate that term. But I think we've gone beyond the slippery slope now. I think in a lot of ways, they're trying to push people out of the public eye for simply existing. Again, I'm not talking about extreme cases. I'm talking about something as simple as two moms on a TV show holding hands in a clip that's like 30 seconds long. Why is that such a big deal? Why is that a problem? I don't think it should be. And that's something that is a very real feeling that gay couples have in most places outside of their bubbles. And that's a shame. I don't think anybody should be like that. I don't think anybody, gay, straight, bi, pansexual, whatever, I don't think anybody should be afraid to show affection to the person they love by simply holding their hand or giving them a light kiss on the lips. But that's where we are. So,
Well, it is kind of funny because in a way, it does feel like we've gone backwards. That the gay characters and so forth of several years ago might have gotten away with more, might have been more accepted. Nobody was looking at stuff, but when did things go really, like, as they would say, social justice warrior and all that? Maybe 10 years ago or something. So anything before that, people didn't make a big deal out of it because acceptance had come along. Oh, yeah, there's a gay character. Okay, fine. And, and this movie is about a gay couple and the movie does fine. Nobody cares. Nobody went out saying, this is grooming stuff. You're trying to change society. It's funny that today people are all over that stuff. You can't have a moment. So I see what you're talking about. as I start thinking this through, the TV show that was going to have the trans person in an episode that they canceled the episode and put it on the shelf. Remember? So out of the pushback from people in society saying what I said earlier, it's okay for you to do this, just don't let me see you do it.
Right.
Have we really moved backwards? You would think things move forward, but is there now such a pushback that the pushback is causing us to roll back, and now it's okay, we're happy with you people, but go back in the closet. Not go in the closet that you can't be seen at all, but I don't want to see you. I think we're there. People, we don't want to see it. Be what you want to be. We're okay with you, but yeah, I don't want to see it. So I think we are. I've thought of this in a number of other ways too. I think we're becoming more puritanical again.
Yeah.
It's like the pendulum has swung. There was a lot of freedoms, and now you've got all these TradCon Christian types and all that,
right?
Bible thumpers saying, I don't want to see any of this, any of it all. I don't want to see a girl in a bikini. My God, I'm thinking Melanie Mack here.
Yeah. The outrageous, ridiculous extremities,
the over
of that
top,
group.
and so forth. So I think we're rolling back now.
It's like an overcorrection, right? Like an overcorrection of everything. Yeah.
And I think that some things did need to be corrected, but everything's being swept away, it seems. Now, I don't think that things are going to totally roll back. I don't think gay marriage is going away or anything like that, but I think that people want out of sight, out of mind. I think they want, just go and hide, go to your clubs, do whatever, but don't put in TV shows.
Well, I can tell you. So what I think is the big issue is that the well was poisoned by social media outlets, like not pushing back on disinformation about gay people. That's one of the big ones. I can't tell you how many times I see videos of some random person sitting in their car talking about the gay agenda. It's like those kinds of things are dangerous. I can understand people having issues with things in other communities. We all feel that way. I think every single person has been like, yeah, there's something I don't really know what's happening over there, but I want to know what it is. I want to know what's going on. I think that's a very normal behavior for human beings. But one of the things that makes it so dangerous is they've talked about a gay agenda, and they've also made it seem like gay people are liars and evil and things like that. So nobody will listen to anything we have to say. So if I make a video where I address some sort of rumor about something that's going on in the gay community that makes us look bad. Okay, so a good example. You talked about in Los Angeles, when Ty did that video about the cruising area.
Right, the U-turn signs, no cruising.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we both made videos about it. We both talked about our personal experience with this, and we've talked about the history of it, and we had two different perspectives on it. But the thing about it is, neither one of us were wrong about our own personal perspectives. We were giving our own opinion about it. Right. But there would be people that would tune in and immediately watch both of our videos and say, no, they're liars because they're gay. Neither one of them are telling you the truth. They're both liars. I had people argue with me about pedantic stuff. And it's a no-win scenario, which is why I do like going into spaces, like going into other rooms and other streams and other podcasts. I'm all over the place. And I do this because it's an opportunity that most gay people will not get. Most gay people will not have the opportunity to chat with the people that I chat with, to chat with the streamers I chat with, to chat with the chat rooms that I chat with. It's a lot of chatting. They don't have those opportunities. And I understand how unique that is. And I do get beat up about it quite a bit. I get nasty emails, people, death threats and stuff like that. I get it, that don't want me to do that. They don't want me to be a part of that because they believe that system is also corrupt and that it's not making a difference. But it is making a difference, Low Watermark. I know it's making a difference. Well, being here chatting with you.
Well, the acceptance that you get when you go into all of these spaces, now in a sense, we have, some of EVS to thank for that, putting your name out there and so forth, and actually making the big deal about, Eric DeBunks, who is an actual homosexual,
right.
For which you made. By the way, I looked at your merch store and saw you really do have
I do have
T-shirts and mugs and so forth with that on there.
Yeah, you have to correct him though; he gets it wrong sometimes.
I know he keeps doing the is a homo. No, Ethan, you're the one who coined that phrase. You should know what it is. Uh, but yeah, so you do get that. So yes, you have to keep going into these spaces. You've got to represent, if only to help normalize the fact. Oh,
Mm.
oh, this is a man. He's intelligent. He's a DJ. He does great videos and so forth. Oh, and he happens to be a gay man. Oh, that's where we need to be. That should be just an afterthought. It's like,
Yeah.
oh well, yeah, he can be a gay man. Oh, that's fine.
Well,
Oh,
one thing
but
I
he's
love,
actually
Joey
a good
Watermark.
creator. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. One thing I love about it is when I go in these spaces, I can talk about gay topics if people want to, but I can also just be there hanging out. Like that's another thing that's a situation. Like if people watch any of my podcasts, my Nocturnal Nerdcast, I can't remember the last time I've gone full on about like some gay topic on that stream because it
Mm.
just doesn't, it's not something that I think about immediately, you know? Whereas on my Debunks channel, it's part of the topics there. You know, it's one of the things I talk about quite often. I'm fully capable of being multifaceted, and gay people are not monolithic, so we're not all the same. Uh, but you know, a lot of people have asked me, you know, when you go into an EVS stream or you go into a stream where, you know, people think differently of you, are you concerned? Are you worried? And I'm not, but I think a lot of that has to do with the confidence that we talked about earlier, like with me growing up and how I look at other people and the kind of my value system. And you know, just people might have their opinions of me, and that's fine. The only time I will ever turn someone down to go on their stream, and this only happened once, was a content creator named Hypnotic. I don't know if you're familiar with Hypnotic's channel
Yeah,
or not.
he's one that gets covered a lot in the space. Though I was never a person who had ever seen him, but he's in
Yeah.
that space that you guys talk about a lot.
Yeah. He wanted me to come on and talk with him, and I was going to do it. I was like, this is another group of people. I'm in a unique position. I can go on and talk to them and see where everything is. Until he came into one of my streams and started saying that gay people were subhuman and all these other things. And I have to draw a line somewhere. Like I have to
Right.
have a certain standard. And I'm willing to talk with anyone as long as they're willing to meet me in the middle. Like if you want to talk to me as another human being and have some real conversations, I am willing to do that. But if you already see me as less than human, then we're already starting out at a power play where you think you're above me just from not being gay. So I have to fight twice as hard just to get to that level. And then I'm never going to be there because you're always going to keep lifting yourself up. So I was like, there's no conversation I could have with Hypnotic because of that. So I
Right.
do have some standards about where I'll go. And then like with the EVS stuff, you know, he'll invite me on every now and again and I'll jump on to talk about Eric July or one of my videos or something like that. And I have had a lot of, like I said, interesting feedback around that. People think that I'm CG now, and I'm like, I'm not CG. I've never claimed to be CG. Like, I've never said that. You know, he invites me on, which again is a very unique thing. EVS doesn't just invite anybody on his streams.
Right.
You know what I mean? He has a very, I don't want to say a specific standard, but he doesn't just invite people on his streams. So when I go on his streams, I understand that I'm speaking to a group of people that probably would never ever have listened to my videos or watched my content before. Never
Right.
ever.
Right.
And so I do appreciate the opportunity to do that. And that's the same way with everybody. When I go on Dave's streams and I have a chance to talk with all everybody's in Dave's chat or Katie did stream or wherever I might end up at, you know, to chat with people. But again, this is online and going back to what we were saying, kind of ripping it back around and talking about how things are going backwards. I still worry about how I would be perceived in public opposed to on the internet. Because on here, it's very different. And I would like to think that there's one day down the road where I could say, I'm going to meet, you know, Low Watermark and Dave, and we're going out to have bourbon or something like that. You know what I mean? And not have to worry about that. But in the back of my mind, it is something that I think about. Even, and this isn't like a passing a judgment on you guys or anyone in particular. It's just the way society has made me feel. So I get worried about that. Like, I'm not thinking you would do anything, but what if we're at a table and someone else does something and I'm sitting there with you? How is that going to reflect on you? And then I start to spiral and think about that and how it affects the people around me, which goes back to my original statement. I don't want to hurt people around me. So I start thinking about that as well. So it just puts me in a bad space. I would like to think we could get back to a place where that's not an issue. But right now, everything is so polarized. I just don't know. And you're right. It has a lot to do with people like, you know, Melanie Mack or John Della Rose or, you know, and I'm not saying them specifically, but that entire concept of like pure, you know, the purity test bullshit that they do with everybody. And,
Right.
I get worried about that. I just want to live my life. I'm not out here trying to change anybody's opinion on art or, make anybody feel a certain kind of way. I just want to be able to live my life and not have to worry about those kinds of things happening. And until we get to a point where I feel comfortable, holding my partner's hand in public, that when that happens, when we reach that point, then I will feel good. Then I'll be fine with it. Right now, that's such a simple thing that I'm so jealous of. I'm so envious and jealous of couples that can do that and not have to look over their shoulders. And that would be, if I had like 3 wishes granted, one of the big ones would be, I just want to hold his hand in public. That's it. I just want to be able to hold his hand without people mean mugging me or possibly talking shit about me because I'm with a guy. That's all I want.
Hmm. Yeah, and I have to wonder, like I say, with the rollback itself and the fact that, and maybe it's not so much of a rollback, it's a rollback in it being more visible now. But as you were talking, I was thinking, you know what? Every place that I've been, every time I've seen couples out, I know for a fact that the people around me would have looked funny at either 2 women or 2 men, holding hands. Just general affection, people would have looked. And sometimes they'd say something, sometimes they wouldn't, but there'd always be that guy there that's, and he'd say some swear and blah, 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 blah. You can't get away from those people, whatever. It would be something like that. And you'd have to go, oh God, so I don't know. So that is sad. It is. So I think a lot of the progress is an illusion of media that out in the real world, there is this pushback, I think. I think that people do want it out of sight. They say they're accepting of it, but they don't want to see it. So that's not really accepting of it. Right. So, and with the current political climate, it isn't going to get any better anytime soon. And not just the political climate, the media producers.
Yeah.
Even the most LGBT friendly media producers are pulling back. Now, of course, you and I have actually talked a little bit about that, which is maybe they weren't the allies they claimed to be in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, it's rainbow capitalism, pink capitalism. It's like I've been around long enough to watch progressive movements be grassroots and go from that to corporate. And I don't even trust Disney. I've said this before many times. People are like, oh, you're a Disney show. I'm not. I don't trust any of these companies. These companies are all in some way or another driven by corporate greed. I mean, that's how they got as big as they. You think Disney got big because they were helping people out? No, they got big because they're a company that, does everything they can to make their money. I mean, go there, try to get on one of their rides now. You got to pay $50 to get a fast pass just to ride like one ride. It's crazy. But yeah, I think there's a lot of, I don't like to use the term virtue signaling because I don't even think that's what it is anymore. I don't know. There's got to be a better term than that, because virtue signaling to me would say that they're trying to do something specifically because they think that it's good and they're looking like for morality or ethically trying to look like they have a opinion about it. But I don't even think that's the case anymore. With the Pixar cartoon, they had a trans actress play a trans character. They didn't remove the character. They made the character cisgender instead of trans. They're pulling back on a lot of their DEI efforts and stuff like that. A lot of these companies are doing it without any pressure, which is what's really appalling.
Well, that's what really bothers me is why are they, nobody even really asked them, and they're doing it, which makes me think there's something more underhanded with them not being supportive and like, yeah, we were only doing it because we were kind of forced to, which upsets me because that means the illusion they were putting out there wasn't even real to that effect.
Right.
We thought that Disney was this big DEI, something to pushing for this agenda, and they pull back that quickly.
Maybe they weren't. That's the thing is all these guys arguing about it. Like the thing is, if and I've said this before, and I will never ever give Nerdrotic a compliment, but I will say this: if we wanted to argue about Disney as a company and some of the things they actually do that are awful, and have conversations about that, I think that would be fine. But pretending that Disney was out here doing things because they truly believe in, the gay community and everything. I never felt that way. I never felt that way about it. I've never argued from that position. And I've told people before, if you look at my channel, you'll see that I've had lots of videos critical of Disney and rainbow capitalism. But on the flip side of that, getting back to what we were talking about earlier, I think if the companies are doing it to make money, which is essentially what the companies do for everything,
Right.
if they're doing it to make money, it still adds visibility,
Right.
which I think is the important thing. So for me, it's a trade-off. Like, I understand that they're in it for the money, but I also understand that the reason why things were getting better was because of that extra visibility. So what's going to happen now is the progress is, even if it doesn't take steps backwards, like we were saying, maybe it is going backwards, but even if it does it, at the very least, it's going to come to a standstill for a while because the companies are reducing visibility. And Target, I don't know if you saw this or not, and I don't want to go too far off the topic on this, but Target's having an awful time right now. They're losing so much money. And the reason why is Target was the anti-Walmart for gay people. And I don't know if this is a big secret for anybody, if I'm revealing anything, but like, they called it Target. It's the place where gay people went to shop instead of Walmart, because Walmart was the evil anti-gay corporation, according to so many gay people. So they were the antithesis to Walmart for the longest time, because so many people in the gay community worked at Target. They talked about their programs being inclusive. They had their pronouns on their badges, all these things that Target seemed like they were doing to support the gay community. And then we started to see that facade tear away a couple years ago when they started moving the Pride merch from the front of the building to the back of the building. And then when they started doing all these things. Now, we're not going to talk about whether people agree with it, disagree with it, because that's not really my point. My point is that so many people thought Target was the company that was supportive of gay people. So a lot of their business did come from the progressive community who was buying, were buying from Target because they thought they were doing it for a company that gave a shit. I was never one of those people. I never believed that Target was any better than Walmart. It was just another company trying to make money. But this is what a lot of people felt. So now there's a massive Target boycott that's happening. And I've never seen it affect a company the way it's affecting Target, because most conservative people never thought, like, they never gave a shit about Target. You're going to go wherever you're going to go to get whatever you need. They didn't care about it. Right. But the vast majority of the business that progressive people were giving to these big stores was going to Target. So once they did away with their DEI with no pressure, they were one of the first companies that caved. Right. One of the first ones. Right. No pressure whatsoever. They get rid of their DEI program, and all of a sudden they're seeing their stocks tank. Money is going down. It is crash and burn for Target. And here's the thing, low watermark. I believe this is what I think is happening with Target is progressive people are not shopping there out of principle, which is fine. It's whatever. But I also think a lot of people that didn't like Target because they sold gay stuff are going, hey, we're not going to shop there anymore either, because look, the progressive people aren't shopping there. We're not going to shop there. Let's watch it crash and burn and see Target fall to the ground. And the reason why I'm talking so much about Target is it's just one example of these companies who, for lack of a better term, we're going to use the term because I don't know anything better, virtue signaled, you know what I mean, to the gay community, to the trans community, made us feel like we were included in something, didn't give a shit about us. And now they're reaping the effects of caving during another political administration, which, by the way, I don't know at any point in history where I have seen businesses all of a sudden change their entire business model because the president is different.
This is an amazing thing that happened here. It's shocking. The fact that the day after the election, people started doing stuff like this. That thing with the trans character, that was, I believe, 2 weeks after the election.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Now think about that. The new person, nowhere near in office, and somebody starts changing things, and then Target did away with their stuff, like the tuck-friendly kids bathing and all that stuff, right in that time frame, before the inauguration even. All of that stuff started going sideways. So
yeah,
what? You have to wonder, did they misread the room? Did they think, oh, the country has swung, so we're going to... Why?
Well, first of all, let's just put this all in perspective. Pride Month is just a few months away, and
it'll be interesting to see what happens this
That's going to be the big thing, low watermark. We might have to revisit this conversation like during Pride Month just to see where everything is. But like, it's going to be very interesting to see if any of these companies have realized we made a mistake, not because we went so far in rainbow capitalism, but We went so far in the other direction that it seems like we're flip-flopping, which I think people, you know what I hate more than someone that has a different opinion than me? A flip-flopper. I
Mm.
hate a fucking flip-flopper. If you are going to believe in something, then believe in it. Stand for something. At least have an opinion of some kind. But when you're a company that's like, they did a video. I covered it on my channel. Target did a video where they were talking about how inclusivity and they want to make sure everybody feels this, that, and the other, whatever. So where is that energy now? What happened? Did you cave under no pressure at all? Nothing? You just decided to flip over and not do anything? You know what I mean? So it's going to be interesting in Pride Month to see which one of these companies try to come back and say, oh, by the way, we're inclusive. Are you going to change your logo to rainbow? Because I can tell you right now, nobody gives a fuck anymore. And that includes everybody. Finally, I think everybody's aligned in some way. You got the people that hated the rainbow capitalism just because they didn't want to see gay people. And then you have the gay people that now hate these companies because they see it as performative. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in June. I can guarantee, look, I'm always right. Say this all the time. I'm always right. I feel like we're going to see around the time of Pride Month, we're going to see smaller, like actual queer businesses upping the ante and advertising Pride merchandise online and selling Pride merchandise. And people are going to be like, we're not buying from Target. We're not buying from Walmart. We're not buying from these large companies. And you know what? More power to them. You can spend your dollar where you want. I'm a very big believer in that. And if you don't want to do it, don't do it. I don't really buy stuff from, like, this is why, even me talking about it is so weird, because I'm not a big shop. Like, I don't go to these big stores and buy things anymore. I used to back in the day. Walmart was open 24 hours before COVID, and I would go in there and spend so much money. I don't really do it anymore. But it'll be interesting. I would like to revisit this in June of this year if you want to, and just see which companies are trying to win back some of their queer customers, because I guarantee it's going to be more than a handful.
Well, and I'm going to bet that a lot of people covering even in the left side space are going to probably end up calling them out and saying, geez, look at these people. We don't believe a word you say anymore. You flipped just recently. Why are you suddenly pretending you're back? Yeah, I it'll be an interesting month to see what happens.
Yeah,
I
I don't
can't, I
know.
can't even imagine.
I will say this. I remember an era for me where you couldn't buy Pride stuff from department stores. They just didn't have it. So you always had to go to the actual like Pride festivals and things like that. I think over the next 2 or 3 years, depending on what businesses do to try and favor some goodwill, we're just going to see that. We're going to see people going to actual Pride events and buying the merchandise from creators there, people making their own art and stuff like that. And these companies are going to reap the benefits of flip-flopping, which again I think is the worst thing. I think if you're a company that has values, you need to stick to those values, write it all the way out. Corporate greed, man. It's not good for anybody. We're seeing it in every company now, every one of them. I think the only two that I saw that kind of stuck with their beliefs is Apple and Costco. Costco also said, we're not doing anything. We're not changing anything. It's just going to stay the same way it was. And Apple said the same thing. I don't know if Apple will cave eventually. We'll have to wait and see. But those are two big ones that I know kind of stuck to their guns. And we'll see how it plays out for them. I'm very curious. But, as a gay person, you get used to, corporate greed and capitalism in your community. Even though we don't always agree with it, it's just kind of, it's the way it's been for the last 20 years. So...
Just as kind of a final point. Now, I know, given all we've said, are you hopeful for the future? Forget the near term, one administration or another. Are you hopeful that America can get on a track that'll be, and I hate to say more inclusive, but that at the very least, these won't be the issues we're worried about? I'm not terribly hopeful right now. I don't know where you are on this.
It's a tough question. I'm not sure how I feel about that. My partner is very, very, it's like a dire thing for him. And I've had to like pull him out of some dark places recently. I've got friends that are leaving the country. They're moving to other countries. One of my friends tonight told me he's moving to Italy in a couple of months. So people are leaving. And I just want to make it very clear. That's not a good thing. You don't want people who were born in this country to feel like they don't belong in this country. I mean, it's one thing for people to be like, oh, we need better immigration or whatever. and have that opinion, but you don't want actual like people born in the United States to want to leave it because they don't feel safe. I think that's not a good place for your country to be in.
Right.
And I think a lot of people feel that way. Um, yeah, I don't know. I want to be hopeful. Look, I think the thing is that I remember a time where a lot of these things didn't exist for us. We talked about, like marriage equality and stuff like that. I remember navigating those years where, you didn't have gay people in movies and TV shows, really. I mean, you had a couple of them, but not in any mainstream stuff. Um, I remember navigating through that space and that time. So for me, it sucks that we have to rebuild again because I feel like we're going to have to do something at a certain point. I don't know when it's going to start, but we'll see. I actually think midterms are going to be interesting. Not to get too political, but it's going to be very interesting to see what happens at the midterm elections.
Hmm.
I think some states even have elections this year. It's going to be really interesting. But I want to stay positive and hopeful, not because I'm delusional. Like I don't think everything's going to be, you know, hunky dory and all of that. That's a really old term. People are going to say he's an old man for saying that. I don't want to think. Okay, I want to vibe check for the country. You need a vibe check. That feels more modern. Vibe check for the country. I'm not someone to be afraid. Does that make sense? Like
Hmm.
I'm a fighter. Like I believe in standing up for yourself. I believe in fighting for the things that you love and not walking away from them. I believe in having your values and going, I'm not going to step away from my values. And I understand that some people are scared and they're worried, but this is my country. I was born here. I was raised here. I love this country and I want the country to be in a better place. And I can't do that if I leave. So I have to sort of find a way to fight, you know what I mean? To be here. That's how I feel about it.
Hmm. No, I agree. I'm being a little older. I'm in the situation where I'm at the point now where once you get old enough, your voice never doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
That's how society looks at it. The older people, retirees, and so forth, they may have money to do things, but nobody courts them because they're a very short term audience. Some of them could literally be gone tomorrow.
Right.
So we don't matter. So I think I'm over the hump of I don't know what I'm going to see. People my age and older probably aren't going to have much effect. It's up to a younger generation to do something, and so maybe that's why I'm not
Even
hopeful.
younger than
Well,
me
yes,
too, I
yes,
think. Yeah.
yep. But people in their 50s still are on the edge of it because they usually hold a certain amount of power too, because they've hit more senior level places. So
Mm.
they're on the tail end of it. But when you're in your 60s, you don't really matter anymore. So I don't know. I'm not terribly hopeful. I think that the country will continue to flip flop, and I don't think it's going to settle. I think it's one of those things where it's going to swing way back to the right. It's going to be too much. It's going to swing
Mm.
over to the left again. It's still going to be too much. And
Yeah.
nobody is ever going to say, slow it down and hold it in the middle because
So your perception is that even outside of this, we're just going to go back to this, like these two extremes going back and forth is what
I
you're
think for
thinking.
I think for a while, especially now with the current administration and the oh, it's our turn now kind of attitude that's going on.
Mm.
So as long as you've got it, I keep talking about the term pushback. It seems to me to always be pushback. The right is going to now overcompensate, and then the left is going to come along and they're going to push back. And
Yeah.
it's like they're never going to realize that, if it settled down towards the middle, everybody could be happy. So I think we're too much at war now.
Yeah.
This whole
Yeah.
thing, you're either on our side or the other side, and the sides don't talk anymore. And
Yeah.
that has gotten so much
Well,
worse. And I don't see that correcting in the
yeah.
near term.
I'm an outlier because I am one of the few people that is willing to go into different places and, talk to people. And like I said, I could, I mean, I want to end this as positive as I can before we wrap everything up. But I will say this, I get a lot of emails and I don't want to name any names because I don't want to cause anybody to get, dogpiled or whatever. But there's a lot of people who are not happy with the way I do things online. And they've called me all kinds of names. And I'm talking about people within my own community,
Right.
who don't like the way I do things and don't see the bigger picture that I see and how my brain works. Um, I will say this though, I always do what I do for the best intention. And if something ends up going south, it's not because I wanted it to go south, but it can happen to anybody. We're not always going to hit home runs.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm going to continue to reach out and talk to people from all walks of life and share my experiences with them because that helps them understand not just me, but my community a little bit better. And I think that's more helpful. Even if I have to be the one on the front lines, that people come after, it is what it is. This is my personality. This is who I am. I'm too old. I'm too old of a dog to just change all of my, spots. Is that the right term? Change all of my spot, do any different tricks, like however you want to say it. So I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing, and some people are going to vibe with it, some aren't. That's fine. But yeah, I feel like what we're doing here, the conversations we're having, if the people that we elected would sit down and have these conversations without cameras on them, without performing for the public, maybe we could get some stuff done. But as long as it's a meme culture, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter generation in politics, I think we're going to be stuck where we are. And that sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess we'll just have to hope that things work out and, see where it goes.
Yeah. Sounds
All
good.
right. Well, this was a good conversation. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me about these things, and I hope we can do more like this in the future.
I appreciate it. And for everybody watching, we're going to end it now. So thank you, Lou Watermark.
Yeah, thank you.